We got into a room and they told us, okay, here's what we started with. Well, we want to change this up completely. And I got about 4.5, 5 hours to redesign, re-estimate the entire job, reschedule the entire job, and give it to the VP to plug the number in, and basically us agree to sign on the dotted line for the number done right there on the spot. And that required that me, as the project manager at that time, knew the job.
Hey everyone, welcome to Beyond the Build, the podcast where innovation meets collaboration in the world of construction. We bring together thought leaders and industry experts to explore the cutting-edge ideas transforming construction equipment, supply chains, building materials, and workforce productivity.
This podcast is proudly brought to you by Faro, the revolutionary last-mile logistics platform, redefining how high-value, time-sensitive construction deliveries get done. Need it fast? Need it right? Faro.
Hey everyone, today we are joined by Jim Driscoll, an accomplished construction professional with extensive experience in pre-construction, site planning, and project management across diverse industries. As the director of pre-construction at Kadean Construction Company, Jim has led numerous projects nationwide, helping clients streamline operations, mitigate risks, and optimize efficiency. Today, we're going to explore Jim's approach to pre-construction and leadership, uncovering how thoughtful leadership, planning, and strategic foresight can drive time efficiency, cost savings, and operational productivity on complex construction projects. Jim, welcome to Beyond the Build.
Thank you for having me.
It's cool to have you on. You and I don't know each other. I was taking a bit to go through some of, LinkedIn and some of the intel that we have, and looking forward to the conversation for sure.
All right, me too.
Sweet. Where are you located, Jim?
I'm in St. Louis, Missouri.
Oh, nice. I lived in Missouri for 2 years. I don't know if you were born there. My wife called it misery. So one of us had a better time than another while we lived there. I have a lot of family that was in St. Louis as well for a long time.
Okay. I grew up down in the Ozarks. If I had a decent golf swing, probably could have just about put a ball in Arkansas from where we lived.
Oh, yeah. Ozarks are just beautiful. I had the opportunity, years ago when I was in marketing. One of our clients was Ozark Regional Land Trust. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but I basically got to travel the Ozarks with a camera and shoot photos and videos. That was my job, and go interview with like landowners and stuff, and real salt of the earth people, and that was so fun. It was a privilege to be able to just visit some of the just awesome places that the Ozarks has to offer. It's a beautiful place. It
is one of the prettiest parts of the country. Just the ruggedness of quite a bit of those little pockets here and there that you find, and great places to see.
Yeah, one of the things that I loved most, and it's just not something that I'm accustomed to being born and raised in Phoenix, was all of the indigenous people activity. That like you can go to pretty much any river or stream, and if it has an overcrop of rock, there's a really good chance that people were there thousands of years ago, and sometimes for spans of hundreds or thousands of years. And you just, if you wanted to, you take a shovel, you take a bit of dirt and you sift it, and you're almost guaranteed to find an arrowhead every other time you do it.
There's a lot of that, yes.
Yeah, it's a very interesting place, both now and historically speaking.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
I missed some of that conversation. For some reason, you can see I'm the least technical on the call. The internet, the cameras and everything. You guys talking about just
Ozarks.
I was Ozarks region.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
In my past life, I suppose, one of the clients that I worked with was Ozark Regional Land Trust, and I got to travel around the Ozarks with a camera and take photos and videos all the time. So it was just going back on how pretty that area is.
Yeah. I'm not from that. I'm from Southern California, the beaches of Huntington. So it's like we have one season. It's just summer all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So,
hey, we're about to have a couple of those days. We get about 5 per year where we get the Southern California vibe. We're about to hit our second half of them. We have one or two in the spring, one or two in the fall. I think today, I don't even think we're going to hit 80 degrees. So
You're not going to hit 80?
We're not going to hit 80, I think, for the first time in like a month and a half, something. So great, motorcycle will come out. You'll hear, quite a bit of that sound.
So is that your motorcycle? Is that like a Ducati or is that like a Harley Davidson?
It's a Harley. It's an
Nice.
08 Night Train. It was the bike I wanted. I wound up snagging it, and I intend to ride that thing into the ground.
Do you do any long
So-
rides? Have you done Sturgis? Have you done anything?
I haven't done Sturgis. I've had that bike out to the Smokies twice. I've had it all the way out to Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico. It's been over Indianapolis. It's been down to a week after I bought it in 2009. I put my then girlfriend, now wife, somehow she stuck around through it, on the back, and we rode down to Fort Polk, Louisiana, where my brother was stationed to visit them over Easter. And I made her ride from Fort Polk back to St. Louis in one sitting. And she was, absolutely ready to kill me at the end of that.
Dude,
It's like, I am never getting on that thing again. And I think with one exception, she's pretty well stuck to that.
So back when I was in college, my car broke down and my uncle's into Harleys. So he's like, yeah, you can ride one of the bikes in the garage. Well, it's 1973 Panhead. I'm like, okay, well, are my kidneys going to be like working after or what am I doing?
Mm-hmm.
It's a totally different experience from back when those bikes were put together to now the soft glides and everything else.
Oh, the difference in the motor mounts, once you get to where even a little bit of that motor vibration is not hitting the frame and coming straight to you. The junker I started on, all of us started on in college. One guy had one where his road pegs were just pieces of rebar that he welded to the frame. And I mean, it was all over, man. Like his legs were done about 5 miles in at interstate speed.
Oh yeah, and if you ever watched like Discoveries, so West Coast Choppers, Jesse was out in Long Beach where we were at, so
Yeah.
by his office, and then you look at what Orange County Choppers did, with the Tuttles.
Yep.
Like everybody's like, wow, those bikes are just crazy, like insane. And somebody's like, have you ever rode one? Did you take it down the street or anything more than 6 miles? They're like, looks beautiful. Turn that thing back in. I was like, I don't want to ride this thing. I just want to look at it.
Yeah, it turns your insides into spaghetti, it sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
Just curious, since you've been in the industry for so long, I have to ask, and you work in Missouri and I have family there. Do you work a lot with structural engineers by chance?
A few of them. Mm-hmm.
A few. Have you ever worked with Crusoe Turley Scott by chance?
The name
No?
doesn't ring a bell. Mm-mm.
That's okay. I was just curious because sometimes I like seeing it was my dad's engineering company. He was there for 45 years, and it's fun whenever I find a thread to pull on that because it's
the world's
cool.
not really that big of a place in the grand scheme of things.
I just know that Missouri and Iowa and the kind of the Midwest has a special place in my dad's heart, and he has his company's done a lot of projects there, and they're a big engineering company. That's why I asked. They have, I think, 70 drafters and like 50, 60 engineers. So it's a pretty big house.
Yep, that's a good size firm.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Digress back to
It's all good,
to the
JP.
discussion at hand. What do you like better? With your experience, you started off more in like the project management side of things, the during the build, and now you're focusing more on pre-construction. What are the key differences for you? And are you where you want to be? I guess. Do you prefer pre-construction, and why?
Hard lessons you learn getting your butt kicked, putting it together, either physically in the field with your own hands, or being the one running it.
You get to feel the mistakes.
Yes. We are creatures who respond to pain. Pain is what has allowed the human race to continue, quite frankly. The federal government seems to be trying to eliminate Darwin from the equation with all the safety labels and stuff that's out there. But in general, humans still respond to pain. You learn, ooh, I should never do that again, or I should think twice before I attempt to whatever. So, what you learn from that is a true rite of passage to excellence in pre-construction. I think, if you come straight out of school and you get right into estimating and pre-con, you can become very good at it. But I truly, I will die on this hill. Excellence is really only going to come from having felt the pain, learned a lot of the lessons, revisited them, and, adapted uh, in the moment to where you can apply that later on, working on the front end of things. When you are a project manager, you're spending the majority of your time running projects. The lifespan of a project in the field versus what should be the lifespan of a project in pre-construction is, probably 6 to 1, 7 to 1 kind of thing. If you have projects that are able to go to kindergarten before they've even put a shovel in the ground, that really shouldn't be the norm for most people outside of maybe a few mega projects. I'm sure, something in, a mega project stadium in New York City, for the Yankees or something in Southern California might wind up having that set of situation and be the norm. But, a manufacturing facility shouldn't have 5 years of burn on it before it gets into the ground. So,
Yeah. Do you find that it is the normal to have experience in the construction side of things before going into pre-construction, or is it a healthy mix of people go into pre-construction right out of school and that's what they do and they've never put a shovel in the ground or never managed a team that's actively working?
original way, construction went for generations was you started out swinging a hammer or shoveling whatever, and you worked your way up through, okay, I'm running a small crew. Now I'm a foreman. Now I'm a superintendent. Then you would move into the office and you would start estimating. And you'd probably never win a job because you are covering every last little thing. And that's where the owner of the company would come in and he'd be like, nope, we're going to cut this, cut this, cut this. And you learn what advantages you get to take and what you don't get to take. But you're taking all of that experience and you are building on it in the how do I take these documents through means and methods and get them converted into a cost estimate, something that is going to be competitive, winning, and still covering and protecting your firm adequately. The more recent phenomenon of college graduates who grew up on 0.2 acres and never picked up a power tool in their life before going to engineering school and are
They
now
struggle with IKEA
estimators.
directions.
Yes. That is a significantly recent phenomenon that we have estimators who have never done any of what they are putting numbers to. It's definitely a different form of learning, for sure. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we face as an industry as a whole. And I know we have some of it in our own organization is working through. It's the Eric Cartman. How do I reach these kids? I'm trying. I'm trying to get to, okay, guys, we have to do this. I call takeoff the submittals of pre-construction. No one wants to do it, but what you learn about the job, what you find out, kinds of RFIs you get to turn in, where you go, ooh, I see an advantage. That comes from getting into every last page, every last piece, and knowing what to do with that information, learning what to do with that information, is really that key that we're working with people to develop some of that knowledge that they don't have from having put it together before themselves.
1000%, Jim. Like I spent 20 years on the equipment side, right? Providing the equipment to the job sites. You said like big projects, My team would do 500 million and above. So NFL stadiums like SoFi, those were the projects that we were on. We saw the 500,000 man hours just on the electrical side, right? We knew the ebbs and flows. And, some of the things that you mentioned was society, we're moving closer and closer to this tech phenomenon. Now we have AI where everybody is kind of like working in this vacuum. And we're like, no, you have to basically stress test this. You've got to put it in real practical terms, getting people and humans to still do the work because, we've all seen the robot games where they can't even open a door and get out of a buggy and walk up 2 flights of stairs. We're not there yet. And so this vacuum mentality of saying, oh, this program is going to tell me all the things I need to know, and I'm just going to take the directions and put them in. You and I both know that that's not a real world application, right?
Trust but verify.
Exactly. People don't show up, equipment breaks down, suppliers bring in the wrong materials, our Gantt chart gets all out of whack, our man hours go up, we're behind deadlines, we're trying to accelerate. I mean, these are like, it's like flying the plane in a class 5 hurricane. And you're like, but the manual says this. You're like, no.
All it takes for an AI output or input is to misinterpret or misunderstand or see something that was incorrectly coded on a partition type. And all of a sudden you find out on a, 6-story fit out of some facility that you have the wrong studs in half your walls and you now have $100,000 bust because your gauge is off or your spacing is off. Well, it was tagged as 24 inches on center, but it's really supposed to be 16, but my AI takeoff did it as X. That could be as simple as, the way we're working through a lot of stuff with Revit. Our architect is all about how do I get Revit and 3D and, virtual design and construction to increase the productivity of my team. And I love that about what he's bringing to the table. He's looking to export a bunch of this stuff, and I look at it and go, yeah, I can only work with about half of this. We have to change the way these inputs are going in, and that adds significant hours on his design time to code and input and explain what a lot of these things are within the model in order for it to output something that is bingo, I can use every last piece of that. And it's a balancing out to where at some point the time is put in on the human interface to verify or check to appropriately protect your organization. That's really what we do in the pre-construction side of it is we're looking to competitively cover the butt. How do we do that? And you have to find the edge and be able to recognize where you're strong, where you're weak, and it's only from having the real information to be able to do that.
Yeah. Can you frame up for us like a story? Like my hand goes to this, right? Tell us about like how big the project was, whether it's a dollar value or a man hour, right? Type of project, and take us through like one that was like you hit the mark, right? The pre-construction, the concept, everything through execution. You were like, that was a win. Timeline, budget, we were dialed. And then one where we're like, hey, I think we got the concept and everything dialed in, and then execution, and it was just like, wow, we really hit the front of the rim.
We experienced
on that
a
one.
lot of pain.
Like no net at all.
Yeah, I kind of have a pick of the litter on B. It's just the nature of our industry, unfortunately, is that you see far more scramble than just bona fide setup success. Pre-pandemic, I did a build-to-suit industrial distribution facility for Whirlpool Corporation down in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and that one meets it was a developer development competition, multiple developers. We were teamed with a development organization and put that project together. It went through 3 rounds of whittling down the team to get to the win, and we secured the win. We secured the win on a day where we got into a room and they told us, okay, here's what we started with. Well, we want to change this up completely. And I got about 4.5, 5 hours to redesign, re-estimate the entire job, reschedule the entire job, and give it to the VP to plug the number in, and basically us agree to sign on the dotted line for the number done right there on the spot. And that required that me, as the project manager at that time, knew the job. Because to have taken something that I either hadn't been a part of putting together or had only worked from a set of bids, budget bids or something that I had gotten from the market, as opposed to understanding the job, my own takeoffs, on being aware of what unit costs were in the field to be able to compensate for the significant adjustments to the facility. There's no way I would have been able to put something on the line that it would have won that project. So when we got the thing dialed in, we delivered the project on time. We returned money at the very end. It was a GMP return savings to back to the owner. We, a $40-something million project. We returned a little over $1 million something back to him at the end. Anytime you return savings, it's great to return some, but you certainly don't want to return, 20% at the end. That
Right.
So it was a fantastic win right there across the board.
And not a substantial amount of.
No, really only a couple of them, and most of those were associated with very, very conscious decisions to modify what was going on with the building. We wound up adding a conveyor system that changed 40-something feet in elevation and had 3 turns in it to come down the hill to go from the manufacturing plant down to the distribution facility there. And it, adding that in, that was a unique one. That was a blast.
And it's your experience to be able to make those executive decisions on the fly, because you're put into a situation where you're like, I have to understand it. You don't have the luxury of, a cost per man hour or, a T&M project, right? Where it's just, you could push in. It's like, you've got to come in because there's other people here and you're going to have to make this adjustment right now. And to your point, the experience that you had, you were able to calculate to a fair amount and saying, yeah, we can still do this and be able to produce.
Yeah, that's the thing about a GMP project is I'm not going to get more. There are projects out there that are done under fee and GC basis, that allow the scope of work to be developed. And the general contract, we do a lot of this in the healthcare world, in which the general contractor is brought on board early engagement under a fee and GC's selection criteria, and then engaged through 75-80% of the design to help steer things through constructability and phasing and some of the more intimate complexities that can come, particularly with working in active healthcare facilities. We did almost 14 phase, I think it was 14 phases, emergency room renovation here recently that was, as soon as you think you have something scheduled, like, we're going to hoist this air handler, this new rooftop unit, and we swing it over the porte cochere. Nope, ambulance pulled up. Sorry, guys.
Or here
take
comes
down
the helicopter.
Oh my God, they're not doing it. I don't know how many times Jake had to have that crane rescheduled to come actually try to thread that needle and get it done. But when the ambulance
where
pulls
it
up,
just becomes a running joke, right? Where it's like,
just
I've got the
about.
crane scheduled, so we're not
Yep.
going to put the unit on the roof today.
Yep. I mean, you get those, a lot of times you'll get those when it's, well, the contract's going to get signed. Okay, sure. The contract's going to get signed
Right.
today. Yeah. The boy who cried wolf there. This is one of these things. When the ambulance shows up, you don't know when it's going to show up. It, something happened out on the highway on the interstate, and they're bringing somebody to the nearest critical care facility there. So, sorry, guys, take the crane down. I know you just got it rigged and you just lifted it 6 inches off the truck bed. Set it back down and forget about it. They have to be open 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Or 66, depending on what year it is. It takes a completely different mindset to work in that healthcare side of the business, doing what those guys do and the way they plan and work and shift on the fly with some of that stuff versus the way some of the other projects roll through that are just simply, look, start date, end date, you are going to drive this thing like a
Yep.
bulldozer through a brick wall.
And it's funny because I spent many years in different sectors, right? Went from commercial to solar to energy, and I even did like 10 years in oil and gas, right? So when you're working with those as well too, you're doing a lot of cost per man hour. You're doing a lot of TM because when you're into a shutdown and open up vessels, you really don't know what you're going to see until you actually crack it, and then you got to shut everything down, and then it's a mad scramble to say we have 700 people on site normally to go to 3,000 people, and we got to run triple shift for 45 days because how many millions of dollars it costs for the unit to be down every day, right? And so you can't go in with, GMP and say, okay, how much is it going to cost? Because it's like, I don't know. Once I get in there, so it's all T&M, or we can factor based on past turnarounds, like what a cost per man hour would be, and then breaking it down. But then you have to go into the fight or flight type of mode where the ambulance or, we also had another project where I talked about SoFi, where California had the substantial rains. We had a mini lake on the project for X amount of months, which then delayed everything, which, as you know, Jim, accelerates the ramp up on the Gantt because Cronky needed that done by a certain time for commitments. So all of a sudden now, the subcontractor is going to say, I got to find all this labor and we've got to accelerate to pull from other projects we're doing. And now it just becomes this coordinated mess where, hey, we got to catch up. And if we went back to the pre-con, it's like, okay, these are not the directions and the timeframes that we set 3 years ago.
And you can only, I don't understand what it is. You can have a building that's 1 million square feet and everyone working on the project that day needs to work in the same 5,000 square foot area. I don't understand what it is about the herd mentality or the planning or sequencing, but it seems that no matter how large your building is, how many stories you have, everybody needs to be working in that same tiny little area where they're bumping into one another each and every time you wind up putting it together. So,
and no one shares.
At some
anything.
point,
that was one thing
No.
from the equipment side, right?
Don't touch my stuff. Don't touch my drum set.
the liabilities. I mean, that the liabilities of loaning someone a ladder or a lift or an electric cord or a drill.
Oh, we
Just
were even talking about within the same organization. You've got different unions that are like with the same company. I can't touch this. And it was a running joke with all the we call them tools, power tools on the contracting. Jim, you probably could agree here. Those are consumable items, right? Anything below $1,000 is a consumable. JP, in consumer world, you're like, that's a $700 drill. That's not a consumable. I'm going to put that in my garage. Well, yeah, you and everybody else in the project, there's a 3-for-1. One to use, one to lose, and one to take home. So all of a sudden you're like, I got 70 guys on this project, and why does every single one of them need?
I just placed an order for 1,100 power tools here. What's going on?
Oh, we had a project in northern Arizona, coal-fired plant, where the Tyvek suits. We had a tool trailer, and those Tyvek suits, they're not cheap. And they're going out like toothpicks. And we're like, you don't have that many people on the project. How are you going through these every week? Oh, it was just
they must have had a McDonald's live on site, and it was just people gaining weight and getting bigger. Just needed to size up.
Yeah, they progressively got larger each time. Yes.
One thing that I liked what you said before when we were just starting, you mentioned that humans learn by pain. And one of the things that humans also do is we're stupid sometimes, and we hurt ourselves in the same way multiple times, over and over and over again. There are sometimes things that no matter how many times we burn ourselves, we just can't seem to learn the lesson. And I'm curious if there's anything in your experience where either you've caught others or maybe you catch yourself where this pain keeps coming up. And you either you just think it's going to be better next time, and every time you just get burned by it. Is there anything like that that's just really common in your field?
To
where everyone
some,
kind of
to, I
thinks
mean,
that like, oh, it's going to just be better or different this time, but it almost never is.
to some degree, there's some of that everywhere. Construction as a whole, the industry, the low bid, low cost model is exactly what that is. As long as we continue to reward the low price decision making criteria, um, we're we're going to struggle to elevate the game of the industry. I understand why it's there. I get it. That metric, however, just, and I don't know the answer.
I think we know the answer. I think the struggle is that that just doesn't match the reality. Like, I mean, it makes sense that you're making these bids that are kind of through rose-colored glasses. Like, because on paper, it's like, if everything goes according to the plan, this is what it's going to cost. But in our heart of hearts, we know that how often does anything actually go to plan, and what level of contingency do we really need to be thinking about?
It's planned, but it's also the competitive environment. We reward, exactly. We reward games. We reward someone who's willing to play games with the documents, go to make it up on the change order. The low number gets the job and then takes the chance at justifying and fighting about it later. I like to say construction doesn't have to be a fight. It unfortunately, for a lot of people who go, there are a lot of people who seem to thrive on it in our environment. They just love that fight. Um, and when they go looking for it, they're guaranteed to find it because it, by nature of, especially the design bid build contractual triangle that you get between designer, owner, and contractor, you disputes are unfortunately a very regular thing. Um, if you want to go looking for them, you can find them in this business, but it doesn't have to be. Owner selection criteria can change. It can be based on more things. The difficulty is getting past the low number. And this happens at the owner level, the general contractor level, the subcontractor level. Everybody gets the, ooh, man, that's low.
That's so funny that
What I could do with that number.
Jim, you said something very
Hey.
so subtly, and it's ironic,
Uh-oh.
but you're like owner selection. Like we always wish, like, if you're a reputable firm and you got a big black log of work, you can pick and choose the projects you want to go do. Right? Some of these new construction companies, they're like, I got work through September. I got nothing on the books. I own all this machinery. I have all these employees, and I got to keep the lights on. So they're willing to do those razor thin margins where, as you know, Jim, these big mega projects, people think, wow, all this money. You break it down, they're making maybe 1%. 1 to 2% is what they're basically making on those projects. So the owner selection is huge because we all know in most industries, you got three options: price, speed, and quality. You can pick two. You can't get all three.
Mm-hmm.
And
Although someone is going to promise all, someone
Oh,
will
yeah.
promise you all
someone will
three.
promise you all three.
Every time.
And
Every
then
time.
you have two options to either have a short-term memory or hold the grudge. And sometimes when you get new players and new owners, they're like, yeah, you didn't do me well here, but I'll give you another try. Or you come in and saying, you went with this firm before, and how did that go? Yes, I am 10%, 5% more, but my track record. I get it done on time. You get a check back. We don't have a bunch of issues. Or you can put the guy on the project that's lower margin, and then he comes, 6 months later and goes, oh, we forgot this, and we forgot this, and we're going to have to do it. But you're like, it's part of your bid. They're like, well, then we can't get it done. So now you're sitting on this project and you have all this capital that's tied up. And as an owner, you're like, I'm already in the mess. I got to get through it. And then you hope that someone doesn't cycle through your company, later and says, oh yeah, let's use them again. You're like, did you remember what happened 2 years ago? Like, no. And then they're saying, oh, but we've changed. You're like, okay, I'm sure. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a firefight.
You're looking around.
As you know.
You might very well, you as the GC may very well be bonded, but maybe your sub's not bonded. What's that? What does that risk look like to you? So that side of things, just if there is any one piece that just meets that definition of insanity for the construction industry as a whole, it is the allure of the low number and falling for it each and every time.
Uh-huh. And
Well,
then
I called him. I checked. He said he's got it all.
managing your
Of course
subs.
he's going to say it.
Yeah.
Of course he's going to say he's got it all.
Yeah, and then you have to go back to managing your subs. We did a project with a very well-known car manufacturer that, had a GC on GC, and actually the owner, they were holding up their payment for the POs. They started the project with no PO, right? The car company's like, "Oh, we'll pay you," right? Because they're a big global car company. And then the GC got, pushed back on their payables. The subs started leaving. Now all of a sudden everybody's like, who's holding the bag here? And then to try to get your subcontractors back after they've been, screwed, that's a whole nother battle that you're going through. But to your point, in the boardroom, when we had it all on paper, everybody was shaking hands and thinking, wow, look what we're going to go, create together, until reality hit. And it was just like, oh, who can pivot and get through this mess and still come out on the other side with all their limbs, compared to who's going to be a triple amputee and just say, yeah, here's the medal.
What, in your experience, what have been kind of some of the big shifts that you've seen in construction in general? Is it the advent of new technologies for planning? Is it, kind of moving a lot more towards prefabrication in certain instances of the construction process to help speed up the build versus building everything strict on site? What are some of the pivotal moments that you've seen? Because you've been, doing this for, just not to make it sound old, but decades and decades and decades.
Easy, JP.
And decades.
A couple of major shifts. I mean, the instantaneous push button options that we have with documents reaching the field through electronic platforms. There are a host of them out there. Project management software that goes to the field. It's brought up on the tablets. The guys are laying this stuff out with the lasers that are directly tied into the model. At a younger project manager several years ago, he asked me, so how did you guys get drawings to the superintendent before Dropbox?
Yeah.
Well,
I remember being with
we had
my
to
dad and
print
doing
them
this with
all
him.
and drive them out there.
Yep. We just deliver them.
And he's like, that sounds exhausting.
There's companies out there that are still,
It's part of that whole low bid thing. Just again, our architect, he has this belief that, in a few years, we're all going to be working in 3D, and it's all going to this, and it's all going to this, and I don't think our industry is going to get there. Remember, in the 60s, they said by 2000, we were all going to be flying, and I don't know if it's big asphalt or big tires that are making sure that we continue to stay on the ground, but there's another agenda afloat that means we don't all have flying cars right now, and the construction industry continues to stay rooted in people who want to touch real things, and I'm one of them. I am one of the worst paper people in our office. I want to touch it. I want the 50 highlighters and pens, and I want to go over this thing, mark it up, write on it, and not just click through it on the screen itself. But that is certainly one of the biggest ones out there, is the capacity to move information from office to field instantaneously and have it available for firms who are stepping up and grabbing that. It is not universal. I don't think it's going to become universal for a long, long time that adoption takes place. There will continue to be a place for low-tech organizations to thrive in our industry. It's just simply the nature of the beast. Because I have a meme that has this beautiful, ornate newel post on a stair. It's this carved horse with this flowing mane, and the steed is up doing this deal. And it says when the client says, you can do it cheaper, and it's a duct taped plastic horse on an ordinary one, that's like, there will always be someone who is hell bent on buying it cheaper, who's busting on their budget, and they're going to go take the low tech guy at the low number. And it keeps it keeps the industry as a whole grounded. I'll try to use the polite term there. It keeps us all grounded.
It is, but there's stability. So like, as you mentioned, it's slow to
Mhm.
adopt. The industry I equated to, it's like making a U-turn in an aircraft carrier.
Mhm.
It's a very slow
Mhm.
process, but the thing is
Mhm.
stable. Like you ain't gonna sink
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. It's certainly it's going to keep on going.
Uh-huh.
The demand is there, the need is there, the improvements in technology is there. The another, prefabrication is not new. I mean, you buy a Sears house out of a catalog well before I was born. It's despite the fact that I've been doing this for decades, and decades and decades
Yeah.
and decades.
No, I guess you're absolutely right. Like, I mean, I'm thinking of the Midwest where most of the barns that you see were purchased through a magazine, and just all the pieces were delivered, and then they built and
Mhm.
rose the barn.
Mhm. You
And the
got
houses for that matter too. Some of the century homes
The
that we
Sears
have
houses.
were
Sears
Mhm.
houses were, almost, Depression era, shortly thereafter, kind of stuff. And precast wall panels. We were doing precast walls before we were doing site cast tilt up. It's prefabrication is not new. Now it has gained some very, very significant buzzword strength here recently. So you see it a whole lot. It's a fad term. Let's prefab it. Prefabrication basically means to assemble something before. But between prefab, and modular is not new either. There have been mobile homes for a very long time. The forward movement of the industry to adopt a wider range of mechanisms for both prefabrication and modularization, in many cases combining those two pieces, seems to be wider because of that time value of money and the ever quickening side of things. Whether it's trying to eliminate the interest carry that we have on the property, or simply getting into the facility sooner because every month that I'm up and running means that I have an additional $500,000 of revenue out of this particular location. Speed to market continues to speak there. It's also, you can't be a one-trick pony with it. It's the right fit for some stuff. You have certain people across a multitude of product reps. And I love when a product rep is willing to say, this is not the right solution. Like, I could give you some, but it's not the right solution. Versus the guy who, there's one in particular who's coming to my mind. In his mind, he is the solution for everything. He's got it. If I just come to him sole source every time, he'd have that answer. It's guaranteed. And it's like, no, like, I know this is not the answer this time. I know full well. I'm materially agnostic, whether it's a pre-engineered metal building, whether it's tilt up, whether it's masonry, whether it's precast, stick stud frame. I want the right application for the facility. And prefabrication, modularization, whether it's knockdown, volumetric modular, in that application, I'm looking for the right fit to gain an advantage on the project that is going to let me be competitive in the low number environment without doing something stupid. And that requires the flexibility and the openness to so many things. I mean, we're talking about 3D printing houses here now as well. So not only do we have this push to offsite prefab modularization, we're also saying about, hey, just bring the whole thing over here and let's just do all of it
bring
on
the
site.
factory to the site.
Yeah, we can, we can do it that way. But all of this is rooted in the reduction in availability of labor as well. I mean, we're watching our, Gen Z is taking to upcoming alpha generations, looking at opportunities for trade school and working with their hands and touching stuff again. Um, I got to get my son to want to, you know, do something like that as opposed to look at the screen. We're gonna get there. There's potentially a shift in a return to some form of workforce normalcy here in the coming decade. But what we're replacing, people who spent 30, 40 years doing this, there's a gap that we're missing, and it's being filled with methods and products that are produced more efficiently in some form of different manner, which I think is a fantastic adaptation. The aircraft carrier sure turned hard. If the Titanic would have turned that hard, it probably wouldn't have smoked the iceberg the way it did. So
Well, we also have to be willing. We also have to be willing to change, right? So what we did is when we took our technology, we call ourselves a progressive disruptor, right? Because what we're doing is we're looking at new applications. So in my career, you mentioned something like, hey, we're doing it differently, different materials, concrete that cures faster, fasteners that hold that are stronger. Heck, the equipment is getting bigger and better. I remember going back to my oil and gas days where now we've got gigantic cranes where we can put units in complete rather than the old way of getting chain hoists and, pulling it down piece by piece. So we're able to shift, and the companies that are willing to say, hey, let's try this and develop a procedure and a process, they're getting that competitive advantage because they're not stuck and they're not saying, well, hey, my labor force knows how to do it this way. This is how we're built. And this is how we're going to do it, to the point of even innovations where I had an opportunity to work with a company with the exoskeleton. JP used to be in the movie industry. So, like Rocky going up the stairs, keeping the camera steady, they developed a tool for DARPA for the military that turned out to be a little bit too loud. And now they're actually in medical, but we actually learned how to take tools like rivet busters and chipping guns that are really, really hard on your body. And as the trades are still holding on and the younger generation wants to play more video games, you got to keep the longevity of your employees. And I'm like, Jim, you know it. You hold a, 25-pound rivet buster up for 2 hours and you're smoked. Right now, all of a sudden, that same tool weighs like 1 pound. And you get the productivity and everything else is shooting through. And those are the new technologies, and the companies that are willing to be genuinely curious about adopting new progressive disrupting technology or services are the ones that are getting the competitive advantage because they're willing to take a chance.
when you set yourself apart, and not all firms are set up to set themselves apart. That's you've gotta know that you're capable of implementing a new idea. You have some companies who go off half-cocked in a ready, fire, aim situation, and they try to tackle or lead something when they're really not set up to. When you have a company that takes a calculated approach, who is capable of doing it, and who adopts that, they set themselves apart into an area in which they can command a certain portion of the market because they are the established leader within that space of performing something at a level of excellence. Which, when you're an organization, what you've got to look for, and what I jump up and down anytime I'm in a leadership meeting with our company, is let's look for areas where we can be excellent. We cannot do everything. We cannot be phenomenal at everything. We have to know what we're excellent at and grab onto that, hold on to it for dear life, drive that bus. And if we occasionally find other things to pick up along the way and do, let's do those, for revenue or for resume or for a favor for a favored client or, something along those lines. But doggone it, let's know what we are excellent at, and let's make sure that we get all over that and stick to it. I think it's good to great calls it the hedgehog principle. You keep your head down and you do the thing that you are fantastic at. That's what the hedgehog does.
Unless there's something like you said that complements, right?
Mhm.
So one of the things that we talk about our company, we're the Uber for construction deliveries, right? We're changing the way, the chaos and the cost. And I look at things from a cost per man hour for you. It's like somebody needs an air compressor. Someone forgot something at the warehouse. You know, it's about like, how quickly can I get that thing from point A to point B without leaving a job site or having somebody else stop what they do. But in our industry, we say we're going to stay in our lane. Like, we're not going to try to deliver the 80-foot boom, right? We're not going to do the big stuff. We are really good about taking the small stuff and getting it to you in less than 90 minutes because you had an emergency that you didn't equate
That is
for,
excellent turnaround time.
right? Like, you're on a job site, something breaks down and you're like, I know where it is. My supplier can't do it. I can literally hit a button and Farrell will show up in less than 90 minutes and be like, here you go. Because I've got 4 people standing waiting for that stuff at a cost per man hour of X. But people don't know. And then they'll come to us and say, but can you do this? And can you do this? And that's where that truth, serum comes in. And I said, that's not our lane. Or let's say, for instance, you want to move like a piece of equipment or some material from Missouri to Iowa. I'm like, well, yeah, I could do it. But Jim, I'm not the most cost effective. If you don't need it right away, bid that out on a load board, get a better rate. Like, I'm going to come to you and just be like, if you need me to do it, I'll do it. But I don't think this is the best route for you, man. And you're like, I can work with that. So again, it's staying in your
Mhm.
lane, doing what you say you're going to do, and don't try to be everything to everybody.
That is the key line right there. You cannot be everything to everybody.
Yep. And so what we do is we try to basically continue to, with the brand awareness. A lot of people are like, I didn't even know this was a concept, or somebody's like, oh, I heard about this, but it's just the slow and steady wins the race. And, we're not going to try to just go from infancy to sprint. It's the crawl, walk, run, build a reputation, do what you say you're going to do, under promise, over deliver, and then just let him do the rest.
Scott and Jim, I want to pivot and talk a little bit about leadership. Something, Scott, that I've grown to admire about you is your leadership style, the experience you have, and how you're able to bring that to a team in a way that tends to be very productive. Jim, I'm curious your own experience, being in the construction industry for as long as you have, and kind of going through the ranks into your current position. What are the qualities of leadership that hopefully you see in yourself that seem to be effective no matter what level you find yourself at?
I know I've done a few tests that have given me a certain amount of self-awareness. I am a difficult person to work for. I have very high standards. That's, I've been told by some that they are impossibly high. To hold for the masses. As I work to dial a little bit of that in, working with more and more people, it's one thing to go from a group of, being a doer and demanding something of myself. It is another to work with a small group of 2, 3, or 4 people. It is another to work with a group of 50 people. And how you align standards, how you recognize backgrounds, understand capabilities, it's it requires a morphing, and I'm really only scratching the surface of some of the personal development that is some of that morphing that is necessary. I will say the number one leadership quality probably that you want to look for is a sense of self-awareness for leaders, and being able to recognize who you are, how you act, what you do, and the ability to step back and go, ooh, that wasn't right, or I messed up there. You're not always going to get it right in the moment. Being willing to recognize it, own it, own it to your personnel. Had to do this with my kids a few times. I didn't handle that correctly. And that's not a fun admission to make at all. I hate being wrong. I'm an engineer, for crying out loud. I'm programmed to be right. But if I'm proven wrong, I will admit it. begrudgingly as it may be in many cases. And that's one of the things that really and truly I've found to serve me extremely well is being willing to own the I did that, I screwed that up, that was my mistake. You can bet I'm going to work my butt off to not repeat it, type of deal. So I'm learning all the rest of them. I screw up on a daily basis. I'm sure if you were to talk to a couple of people in my office, they'd be able to read you a new one each day. Yeah, Jim messed this up, but it's you work with enough people, they're going to be able to find something on you each and every day if you're working with them and actually interacting with them correctly.
Sounds a little bit like our core value of humble.
Yeah, when we built a company, we have 4 core pillars. First is servant leadership. Second is humility. Third is unapologetic. And then the fourth is taking care of your people, your customers, and your company in that order. Because as a leader, like I tell them, I don't have it all figured out. I've got to learn how to throttle and recalibrate my pace based on my team. And that works in the family dynamic as well, too. When I want to get up, over, or through a wall at a certain time frame, and I realize that if I run faster than my infantry, I've just exposed myself, and now I'm an army of one. And so what I had to do was, first one, like you said, identify what I believe my brand to be, and then ask my audience, do you align with my brand the same way I do? And that, for me, shows that humility, and I pray for their grace to say, yeah, you don't have it figured out. And so that's the recalibration that we go through. And, with what I'm interacting with JP, our customers, is constantly genuinely curious about how can I basically serve them rather than serving myself. But to your point, none of us have this figured out. Like, we just kind of run with our head down and knock it against the wall. And, the difference between, I think, the ones that succeed and the ones that don't is the willingness to be uncomfortable, get knocked down, and keep moving forward.
Yep. Learn from that pain. Each time you're knocked down, learn from that pain.
It's like going to the gym. You're breaking down your muscles to make them bigger and stronger. Like, if you want to cocoon yourself in a vacuum, you're only going to grow so much. And to your point, like earlier on the podcast, we talked about the safety protocols, which you and I both know they are needed, right? We're not doing high rises in New York with no lanyards anymore. Like, there's a difference between what you got to do and what's kind of really stupid.
Right. It's a fine line.
There's a very fine line. There's a lot of safety things that we're just like, yeah, that's hurting us. But almost to even like to our health, our bodies have to be exposed to germs to be able to overcome them. If we just continue to walk around in gloves and everything else and don't touch anything, you're probably going to get sick to a point where your body's not going to be able to sustain something. Where us,
you don't need to be Dwight Schrute, where he has, so-and-so sneeze on his toast. You don't have to go that far, but yeah.
Yeah, I grew up eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches out of the sand in California. I'm like, or surfing in the Santa Ana River mouth. I go to the doctor. I'm like, whatever you're going to try to treat, my body's already been exposed to it. I've been drinking sewage for 20 years.
Of Ozark River water because we spilled over or got shoved into the thing, or I went into it wrong and got a big old swig. So,
George Carlin.
There's no telling what's going on in there.
Remember George Carlin's skit? He said one time, he was like, oh yeah, I grew up in was the huts or something like that. Like, when polio was around, he was like, no, we were tempered in crap. Like, we were fine.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. They had it all.
They had everything. But yeah, man, this has been fantastic. We want to be courteous of your time. I think we've been at it an hour right now. We could probably, I think, honestly, I could go for another hour with you. That we could probably talk about things.
We'd have a blast. Yes.
Yep.
Jim, any very quick tips that you'd give to that next generation coming up? Those, you were mentioning like Gen Alpha and then like, or anyone who's not necessarily that, but just someone who's just coming up in the industry. Like, what are some of the key things that you think are going to help drive their success?
You're not going to learn it any other way. Dig in and do it. Be willing to do it. That's what I tell recruits when we're talking with them, intern candidates or new hire project engineer candidates. So I go, what they'll ask, what do you expect me to know? What do you want me to know? Like, I don't need you to know necessarily anything about construction. You're coming in as a new hire. I expect you to know very little. What I expect you to bring is sets of grit and ownership. If you're willing to dig in and grind stuff out, and you are willing to own and your wins and your losses, those are two things I cannot teach you. You have to bring those. If you bring those and teach you anything you need to know about the construction or pre-construction process to help make you effective in this industry, but you have to bring those two. You've got to find those two yourself.
Absolutely. It goes back to the age-old saying, like, you ever try to push a rope? It's like, if you don't have the determination and get to want to succeed, I can sit here and train you and teach you all the skills that you need to do to be successful. But if you're going to approach this like a rope, more pressure is not going to get us across the table.
Well, I think that's a good point and some advice to leave on here. So thanks, Jim, so much for being here. Great conversation.
It's been fantastic.
And looking forward to this
Scott,
episode.
Thank you.
being
Appreciate the
released soon.
invitation and jumping on here with you guys. It's been great.
Yeah, if you know anybody
Our
else
pleasure.
that would like to have a conversation with us, I mean, that's what we're trying to build here, is just awareness in so many different parts of the industry and help elevate. So if you have any recommendations of a good storyteller or something that you should really talk to this person, I think it'd be a really interesting conversation that you would want to hear about and see how we interact. Please send it that our way and we'll reach out.
Gotcha. All right. Wheels are starting to turn.
All right. Cool.
Well, goodbye, everybody. Thanks again.
Alrighty. Thank you very much. See you later.
Well, everyone, that is a wrap for today's episode of Beyond the Build. We took away some real valuable lessons and insights, and I hope that you did as well.
If you enjoyed this episode, we would ask that you subscribe so you can never miss an update. If you're a thought leader looking to innovate in the construction industry, let's talk. We'd love to connect and hear your thoughts.
You can find Beyond the Build on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, plus anywhere else that you listen. And if you'd like to learn more about how Faro is changing logistics in the construction industry, please visit our website at faronow.com.
Once again, thanks for tuning in, and until next time, be humble, serve others, and make an impact.